What's up, pretty gang? It's your favorite nail tech Peaches back with another video. I apologize for how quiet I have to be, but y'all, I am babysitting, which is kind of why this video was posted late, even though I said I'm doing a double upload, which I still am, okay? So today we are doing another acrylic toes video, and I really wanted to focus in on clients who have deep sidewalls or skin that kind of encompasses the actual toenail. You can see this client's toenails are extremely short and small on the big toe. This is not uncommon, but it's also not the most common thing you will see, but it is quite normal. So before we go ahead and get all up into the details, focusing on the big toes, I want you guys to make sure you're subscribed. Leona McCall is our subscriber for today. You guys don't forget to turn on your notifications, because who else is going to notify you when I'm, here doing my thing. So this particular video is focusing just on the big toes. She looked for a deluxe acrylic pedicure, which means we've already done our pedicure before we're about to get into the enhancements. And so right here, I'm just making sure her nail grooves and those sidewalls right there are completely dry, or as dry as I can get them, because I don't want to trap any moisture right off the bat. Okay, so that's number one. So you will notice, right, on this toe especially, her nail grooves and sidewalls right there are extremely deep. And the first thing she had told me before I even looked at her toenails was, I thought I had a problem with ingrown, so I cut my toenails extremely short. Now you can see how I have to pull the skin down even on the tip of the toe, right? And so right here I'm explaining to her, I said, a funny thing, a misunderstood thing is that when people think that they are having issues with ingrowns, and you see how determined I am to make sure that I go ahead and prep those sidewalls, and I'll get into more of that in a minute, but people actually think, oh, if you have a problem with ingrowns, keep your toenails cut extremely short. From what I learned in nail school, right, that's actually one of the worst things you can do, because as you can see, her skin is just encompassing that toenail. So for those of you who struggle with ingrowns, or have, clients that struggle with ingrowns, the first thing is most ingrowns are not ingrowns, okay? Most of the time it's an impacted toenail, which means people who have deep nail grooves like that, right? Basically what happens is a lot of stuff gets trapped into those nail walls, and it's so deep and so much that it's really hard to clean out. A lot of times you'll see nail salons just cut away at the nail, which, by the way, we are not supposed to be doing, at least in the state of California. Ingrown toenails are not something we are supposed to be removing, because a lot of the time it's not actual ingrowns, okay? It's impacted stuff, and they're just getting rid of unnecessary things, okay? So I just want to let y'all know that if you have clients that come in with really short toenails like this, saying that they have problems with ingrowns, just let them know cutting them short is not going to solve the problem. It can actually worsen it, okay? So of course, I'm going to go ahead and prime as normal. Now, you guys saw me do my prep, and I was kind of getting at different angles. And I always tell you guys, you have to make sure that you're comfortable with your files, comfortable with your e-file. That's one of the reasons why. Because sometimes there are going to be tough angles that you're going to have to get. And it's not going to be the most easiest thing, right? Just based on, especially this one, based on how deep the nail grooves are. Now, like I said, this isn't uncommon, but it's also not the most common thing on the world to see. So I'm going to show you specifically how I deal with not only the length of the toenail, but specifically these deep grooves, okay? That's encompassing her natural nail, which is natural, which is normal. That's how her toe is. It's nothing that necessarily causes that, okay? So because this toenail is so short and the grooves are so deep, I'm starting with a bead that is on the drier side. You can see, I don't want to say I have to put force to handle this bead, but you can definitely see it is not super wet at all. Definitely drier than the beads you guys have seen me use for acrylic toes. And the reason is because I'm not going to try and do this whole toenail in one go. If her toenail was, had a little bit less of deep grooves, then yes, I would. If it was more like the skin was surface and even with the actual toenail, but because there's a lot of deepness on the sides, I'm just going to concentrate on just laying the acrylic there to put down a base, okay? Tucking in the cuticle areas has never been more imperative than now, all right? Because what happens is, if you don't tuck into those grooves, right, it doesn't have to be as deep as possible, but you can see I'm angling my brush so I can get in there, okay? And actually, I'm doing this video a little bit more no, it is more zoomed in than I normally do because I really want you guys to see. But if you don't tuck those cuticles in that area, you see, and you don't make sure that it's nice and flush, what's going to happen is when you go to file, it's not going to be right, and there's going to be moisture getting in underneath these enhancements. Okay, now this particular client is not new to acrylic toenails, right? She said she has gotten a tip on from the shops once before, but I've actually already known her before she came to see me, but this is her first time with me. Okay, so you guys are seeing how I'm working with it for the first time, just like you're seeing it. So once I establish just that base, that length, like, okay, I've got some covered, I'm gonna go ahead and establish the cuticle area. Okay, so you can see for this, it's a little bit wetter than that base bead was because I need to get some of that in that little groove. I don't want it going down completely into there or flooding it, because then I won't be able to seal it off, and that can cause problems. As well as it grows, the acrylic can get stuck in those grooves. You can have problems that way with irritations. Okay, this is why it's so important to be educated as a nail tech and not just take advice from just anyone. I've dealt with hundreds of feet, probably thousands at this point, I feel like, since school. I say maybe at least 1,000 times of doing feet, but you learn and get more experience as you go. Everybody's situation is case by case. No two toenails are alike. Although you may have seen something similar, it's still going to be a little bit different on everyone. So you can see I got that base down, and now I'm going to worry about the length. This particular client does work on her feet a lot. She stands on her feet for 10-hour shifts. She was concerned that they'd be too long, which a lot of first timers are like, oh, don't make them too long. I personally don't have a standard length for everyone. Well, actually I do. Standard length would be at least the tip of the toe or longer, depending on the structure of your toenail and things like that. However, clients with extremely small big toes like this, because even if her toenail was grown out, it would still be pretty short looking, only because her actual anatomy of her big toe is just small in general. Okay, it's not that much bigger than her little toenails. So because of that, I'm sticking just to the tip of the toe. Now I could have gone longer, right? Because when I file, it's going to end up shorter than this. But the thing about it is, I want her to be comfortable, and these are going to grow out some, and I would hate to put it to a length that, if she decides not to maintain these, is going to drive her nuts, or simply just because she has, a small toenail, just by natural anatomy, it's going to cause a little bit of issues to try and make them longer than what they need to be. Okay, so again, I'm going back to the cuticle area, right? Because with clients that have these grooves, you need to make sure that the acrylic you put and use is even all around. All right, because if it's not only are you're going to be filing too much into those grooves, but also you're not going to have a smooth appearance when you do get to filing. Okay, I know it's kind of a weird thing to think about, or a weird thing to say, but you need to you see how I'm pushing into that little groove? I want to make sure it's even now, so that way when I file, it's not too much. Now, do you see how much of the gap has been filled with just the acrylic alone, and it gives her a much different appearance to her toenail? This is the kind of things that make people confident, and so I'm just making sure it's not too deep in those grooves. Okay, because once again, the goal is not to push all this acrylic all the way down into her grooves, because we're still keeping this surface level, but we do need to kind of tuck the little ends, so that way they sort of wrap around a little bit, right? Just so that way those edges, when we do file, it's going to be perfectly aligned with everything we need it to be. Okay, so as you can see, that's the final application. So here we're going to jump into filing. Now with the e-file, I am using it a little bit higher than I normally would, just because of how the acrylic sits. I need to be able to have enough power to kind of get around these grooves, and you can see how I'm constantly, once I get into those specific areas, I will be pulling the toenail apart, but the skin, I will be using my thumbs and my fingers to kind of pull the skin down, so that way I can get into those sidewalls, so that way I can seal it off. So right now I'm worrying about the surface and that cuticle right there, and you saw me, well, you didn't see me, but I'm adjusting. I'm playing with the speed to get a speed that I like, that's still safe on the skin, because I don't want to cut her. Okay, so yeah, you can see I'm gonna be focusing, you see on these sides and stuff, how my thumb I'm using to pull apart, because at the end of the day, like I said, I'm gonna keep reiterating and continue to keep addressing this. We don't want this acrylic to just be straight up packed down into the side of her toenail, because that's going to cause problems. But do you see how I kind of have to wrap my wrist around, right? I'm still in front of her, but I kind of have to angle my wrist the opposite way so I can make sure that I can get into that groove area, because she does have, you see, it's not all the way flush. It's not super down in that groove all the way, as you can see. It's pretty surface level. It's just her skin is very meaty right there. So that's as far as I'm going to align up with how we built out with the tip. That's all we're doing. So you see how I open it up, because I want to make sure that I get in there. You can see she's not at all in any pain. The speed that I'm using is still not a super high speed, but it is still effective. And you see how I am taking breaks. I'm picking it up a lot. I'm moving different areas, and that's because I also don't want to give her any rings of fire. Now, this is, how to explain it? This is something that you will learn with time. What are safe speeds with the machines that you are using? But at the end of the day, our goal is to provide a really nice aesthetic, something that's pleasing to the eye, completely safe, okay? And because I did layer the acrylic that way and put a base layer and go on top, she's not going to feel a lot of heat, and this is why I continue to adjust the drill, so that way we're staying within a safe speed, okay? So now for the tip, right, I'm just making sure that I square it out. I am using the tip of my thumbnail and my thumb to pretty much use that as a barrier between her skin to pull it down, because as you guys saw, the tip of the toe pretty much encompasses the nail, and so I don't want to cut her in any way, shape, or form. And again, I am gonna have to pull those sides back so I can kind of get in there. And you can see, you got to know how to work with your file, right? So when you have clients that are like this, don't be scared. Do not leave those sides sloppy, because I'm telling you, the enhancement is not going to last. All right, I know it can be daunting, and you can feel like, wow, how can I give the best result? But I'm telling you, it comes with experience. And if you are not a person who is educated and who is confident in safe practices, please do not do this, okay? Because either you're gonna wind up cutting someone really bad, okay? Because this client, like I said, this client has a lot of skin, and all of this is live skin. None of this is dead skin, okay? Dead skin means skin that obviously is dead, dry, that's meant to be flaked off or file, like with a like while you're doing a pedicure, or like cut, like if you were using, I don't use nippers because technically in California you're not supposed to use nippers, but cuticle scissors, things like that, right? Live skin is, hey, if I cut you, you're gonna bleed. All of the skin on her toes right now is live skin, okay? And that's why you will never see me cut the cuticles on toenails, because to be honest, it's almost always going to be live skin. Like, yeah, on the actual toe, the stuff that's dead is what scrapes off of the cuticle, off of the cuticle on the nail plate. Okay, so keep that in mind. So as you can see, I go back in with my nail file, I'm in my e-file, and I'm just continue to use this to shape, and I want to make sure there's no sharp corners underneath, because once again, as you can see, the skin of her toe pretty much wraps around the toenail. Now, this is not unsafe for her to have an enhancement. What would be completely unsafe and honestly a waste of time is using a nail tip. Nail tips shouldn't be used in any type of manner regardless, but the thing about it is, clients who have toenails like this, although it's tempting to kind of put a tip on them and let it be, you see in there, I'm trying to see if it's flush or not, but although it is tempting, you can see how a tip would not even hardly stick, just for the simple fact of how the skin on the toe itself encompasses around. So of course I went ahead and filed all the other toenails, and so I just went ahead and am getting all the dust out, because I'm getting ready to top coat, and I am trying to dry those sidewalls very well, because again, I don't want moisture to stay in there in any way, shape, or form. And you can see how much more flesh it is. Now on this toe, you can see how the toenail is, it looks like it would be worse or harder, right? I'm drying this one as well, but you can see those sidewalls you see on the side of the toenail, they are not as deep. So although this one looks way shorter and way more chipped, the sidewalls and the nail grooves on the side of the toenails are not as deep, which will make this a much easier task. You see how I can much more easily prep and kind of get into those areas? Yes. So that's something you have to keep in mind. Although things may look like it's like, oh, this one's going to be much harder, that's why you have to do your assessments and make sure that you understand the anatomy of toenails, the anatomy of feet. This is why in school we learn all those type of things. You learn about different types of toenails, you learn about different reasons why things grow a different way. Like I said, her toenails could have been longer, but she deliberately cuts them this low because of thinking that it's going to prevent ingrowns, which I previously mentioned, that actually can exacerbate them. If you don't know what that means, I believe that means to kind of like, I don't want to say speed it up, but worsen them, etc. Okay, basically it won't be good. So of course I'm going to go ahead and finish off with some Young Nails Protein Bond 2 times because of course I'm a Young Nails girl. I forgot to mention my liquid is also Young Nails, and actually the white that I use today is going to be Young Nails Milky White, I believe, but it's just in a not polished jar. Actually, this might actually be just not polished Milky White, to be honest with you. I have not been able to get a new jar for my Young Nails Milky White. That jar kind of got ruined, and I've had to just pour it from my big jug into that one. So yeah. Okay, so you can see I used a way bigger bead this time, a little more wet than the other one, less stiff, and so I am going to go ahead and lay that base down, but for the whole thing. Now it might look like I don't know what I'm doing, it might look like, oh my gosh, like what's going on, this looks so messy, but what I'm doing right now is just make sure I have a nice even base. I'm tucking some areas, but I'm not concerned about if it's the most perfect at the moment. I'm just concerned about how I am building the tip out and how I am starting to kind of fill in those sidewalls a little bit. But you can see how much easier it is on this toenail just because the nail grooves on the side are way more shallow. So do you see how much easier it is for that acrylic to get where it needs to go? So sometimes when the brush cannot, like the acrylic is a little bit too dry for it to move, I just will go ahead and move it with my nail, and so I just went ahead and wet my brush a little bit more, and so I'm moving it around. So this is why it's good to know your liquid to powder ratios, because of things like this when it looks like, oh, she can't move that, she can't do X, Y, and Z. No, you can. It's just at a much different rate, and I did it this way so I can be like a little bit more strategic with how I place everything. So when I go on with that second part of the base, it's really just going to be more at the cuticle area. Okay, and this is why it's important to have like a brush that is pinched a little bit, because if my brush was completely oval, I would not be able to use the body of the brush this efficiently. So you can see, because I knew I was going with the second layer, I just wanted to make sure the edges were flattened out, but I'm going in with the cuticles, and then yes, it is a little bit more runny than all the beads that I've used, and that's because the way, not on this side, but the side closest to my thumb, the way that sidewall sits is, I don't want to say it's like a little funky, but it has a pocket that's a little bit deeper towards that cuticle area where I'm touching right there, versus it being like an even like deepness in the side pocket right there. So it's literally just in that area right there is the deepest part, whereas on the other big toe, all around that toenail was pretty deep. So you can see not too much trouble here. You just have to know how to build up an even layer of acrylic, so that way when you go ahead and file, you're not going to have any lumps and bumps. And you can see already, you see how there is some like, it's like a lack of acrylic right there on that side closest to where my thumb was at. And so I'm going to go ahead in with a little bit more, because if I leave that divot right there, when I go ahead and file, I'm going to have a little bit of an uneven surface. So I'm going to go ahead and extend the toenail just a little bit, because I was able to do all that in one sweep. I'm really just doing this so that way I can have the width that I need, because she does not have, a very long toenail or anything. I am estimating to, if she did grow out a toenail, how wide would it be? What would it look like? So some of this is really imagination. You got to follow the nail grooves and the nail walls, and so you wouldn't want to fill it in with acrylic and make the tip wider than it needs to be. That's something that you have to think about no matter what, and no matter who it is. You got to make it look as natural as possible, as if, hey, if this client were to grow at this length, what would it look like? You know what I'm saying? So yes, your work should have an overall look to it, but also within that, you have to make sure that you tailor it to each client. Okay, so now you can see I have a much more smooth base, in the sense of like where the acrylic is placed and stuff like that. And so I'm just making sure I tuck everything in, You see there, yeah, there still is a little dent over there, but you can just quite literally see how much easier it was on that toe. So now that it's dry, right, and I was happy with the thing, like I said, there still was a little bit of a dent, but I was able to fill in what I need to fill in to provide an even enough surface, okay? Because we also don't want it to be too thick, because that's going to take forever to file through. So as you can see, it's much easier to file on this toenail. I don't have to do too much trickery, you know. I'm doing it a little bit right there because you can see where it's deepest at right there, but other than that, I don't have to do too much work on this one. It's kind of like doing standard filing for the most part, okay? And that is something that you guys have to think about, although you might think like, okay, every person's toe, like that's their pair of feet, this is the toenails they have. Things can differ from one foot to another, right? And you have to know about all different types of techniques and really use your critical thinking skills. I point that out a lot because as a nail tech, people think stuff is just supposed to look pretty, but there are critical thinking skills that you need to put two and two together so you can not just provide a really pretty aesthetic, but also something that's going to have longevity, something that's going to be a really solid enhancement, and something that as it grows out, right, the nail underneath and stuff is going to be able to grow with it and cause no problems. This is why I always tell my clients, please keep up with your enhancements with either get them filled every month or other month as, you know, as needed, because everyone's growth cycle is different, or get them and remove them if you know that long term you're not going to take care of them. Because, you know, hey, there are clients who they get a set, they wear it till the wheels fall off, they're prone to injury just because, oh, I kicked this, oh, I did that. And if you leave anything unfilled for however many weeks and you just decide to wear them till they fall off, you know, that is a risk that you take. That, yeah, something can happen, or yeah, as they grow out, they weren't meant to grow out for that long. They're meant, yeah, this technique was meant to last for only 4 weeks, you know, maybe 6 weeks, and you're supposed to come back so that way I can correct the enhancement now that you're in a different phase of your growth cycle. You see what I'm saying? So on this toenail, I'm still using that technique, putting my thumb in the way of the file. I tend to do that a lot, which is why that thumbnail on the side is like so angled weird. Yeah, because I end up filing down my own nail, but it's okay. I always take one for the team. And so I use my own hands and nails and fingers to kind of act as a barrier between the client and the file, so that way I don't cut them if possible. You know, it all, you know, sometimes it does happen, and that's where I spray them down with that foot spray that you saw me use earlier, because it is really just alcohol spray, and alcohol is for cuts, remember, not for cleaning. It don't matter what those things say on the back of it. Do not be surprised that it says for cleaning, because it's not, okay? But yeah, so I'm just gonna use my e-file to kind of straighten out that tip. I'm one more time into those grooves because, like I said, you know, file into what's safe. I'm checking to make sure that everything's cool, but like I said, on this toe there's not very many grooves. I'm just filing now for a seamless appearance, okay? So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making this video. Originally I was not going to I wasn't sure if I was going to record this or not, but then I was like, you know what, yes I am. And I'm double checking this against the other one. Now keep in mind also, toenails are going to differ from each other, because one toenail, like the nail bed could be longer or shorter or shaped different, so that's something you have to take into account. Make them as even as possible, as symmetrical as possible, okay? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm so excited because I've just confirmed that I have a really cool Halloween video coming for you guys Friday, which tomorrow I'll be letting you guys in. I mean, know more about that because tomorrow's Thursday. But yeah, you guys just be safe with your enhancements. If you have any questions, let me know about down below. I love hearing from you guys. I love the comments. Once again, I apologize that I'm so quiet, but the baby's room is right there, and so I gotta be quiet, okay? So here is the big toe. This is the first one that I had did, just a really up close to let you guys know, like, they look very natural, they look very nice. I hope you guys got some good information out of this video, because I know it's tough when a lot of people don't show you how to work with a lot of different types of feet, but you know me, y'all, I love to keep it real. I like to show you guys my work day, okay? And of course, I'll see you guys in the next one.